Any way that the House can get there is okay by us. And I actually am optimistic that we will get this done.
What the president said to me in 2009 when I said, let's get going on immigration reforms, he said, Luis, go find me 40, 50 Republicans. Well, if they asked me today, go find those 40, 50 Republicans, I tell them I found them.
One addendum to that. The Republicans, many of them told Luis Gutierrez not to reveal their identities, not just yet, because they'll vote with him for ultimate citizenship, the pathway to citizenship, but keep it quiet, especially during the August recess. We want town halls not interrupted. This is so disturbing. We expect a lack of transparency from Obama, but not from these Republicans. I am sick of this behind closed doors. The only thing they don't have is the smoke-filled rooms. But we're tired of this. The people always get sold out behind closed doors. And it's a fait accompli. The fix is in. And we have updates on the NSA program as well. I'm absolutely thrilled. Our old friend, Dr. Ron Paul, is with us. Of course, former congressman, presidential candidate, and now launching his own internet TV channel called Ron Paul TV, and we're just delighted he's with us. Dr. Paul, how are you, sir?
Laura, I'm doing fine. It's nice to be with you.
So before we get into the NSA fiasco, let's talk about this report today that Gutierrez has these votes for this pathway to citizenship, and Republicans, a number of them, have approached him and said, I'm going to vote with you, but please keep it sub rosa. Your reaction to this?
Well, I think the information is coming out about a process that happens all the time. I think there's a lot of that goes on because people say one thing and do another, and they make these plans. I guess one of the biggest thing that goes on in Washington is if you look at a bill name does exactly opposite of what the bill is going to do. So in politics, when they go home, they say one thing or they're silent. They have other plans. So I'm not surprised about this. It's just the fact that the evidence is out there, and it's just another nail in the coffin of credibility with Congress. You know, it's pretty low right now, and this will just make it that much lower. But it also sort of splits the conservatives and the constitutionalists and the libertarians because some of the conservatives will do this, others will argue the other case. So it just makes us more disorganized, I believe. Especially when there's so much where conservatives can unite in opposition to what the administration has done, both with Obamacare and in creating this massive surveillance apparatus in Washington. And before we get to that, Dr. Paul, your reaction to this 1,200-page Senate bill and a pathway to citizenship, which they claim will be 11 to 12 years, and they claim that's going to be it. No benefits, Dr. Paul, no chain migration. They're all going to be speaking the king's English, the queen's English, and the prince's English. Everyone's going to be speaking English. It's all going to be fine. No criminals are going to be left behind. Your reaction? Well, the size of it should make you suspect, because that means no one congressman is going to be able to read that and understand it, sort of like Obamacare, who really understood everything that was going in there. But I had a basic rule. I introduced a lot of legislation, and I take a hit on the fact that I didn't get a whole lot passed, but that was because I was challenging the status quo. But for us to improve things by repealing laws and getting rid of bad things, it doesn't take 1,200 pages. So if you want some reform, I happen to believe in a very generous work program, but I don't believe in easy road to citizenship. I don't want it to be a voting thing. I don't think you can solve those problems, as long as there's welfare and there's benefits. But you could have a generous work program. We've had it in the past. But you could probably write that in a page or two, and then a person could know exactly what they're looking at and decide upon it. But when it's 1,200 pages, which is rather typical, I mean, whether it's the Patriot Act or whatever, these are very, very complex. Buried in it are little items that people are able to interpret certain ways. Just think about how Jim Sensenbrenner had to change his mind about the Patriot Act. He wrote it. He said, now they're abusing it.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing with Marco Rubio, though, right over there in the Senate. He went into that room with old Chuck Schumer, had already completely gamed this whole thing out with La Raza, Cecilia Munoz, the president. They'd already figured out what they were going to do on immigration. Marco goes into that room and thinks he's going to be a real give and take. Then he's shocked at the other end. He's like, oh, gee, it's not quite what I had hoped.
Well, that's why they think that I'm overly simplistic, but I base what I do on a basic principle, that is, non-intervention in the Constitution and make the promises and never raise taxes. And if you just stick to those, it doesn't get complex. And you ought to be able to see through what they're doing in Washington. But, I think over the years it was easier to get away with that because the country had a little room with the wealth. And liberals and Republicans and conservatives want to spend, but for different reasons. So they usually compromise and spend the money. Today's a different story. Our liberties are threatened. The foreign policy is failing. At the same time, the economics are failing because Keynesian economics doesn't work. And that's why more of this is going on. But I see it as an opportunity for us to present the case for limited government.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Dr. Paul. I think this is where the rubber meets the road. We're going to know where everybody stands on these big issues, from the NSA spying to amnesty and that pathway to citizenship to the expanding government state. We're going to know where everybody stands, which is just fine by me. And speaking of Dr. Paul, I want to play for you what Obama said on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Let's listen.
There is no spying on Americans. We don't have a domestic spying program. What we do have are some mechanisms where we can track a phone number or an email address that we know is connected to some sort of terrorist threat.
Your reaction, given that we learned yesterday that, in fact, they're tracking content of email, if the email inside the United States, if it contains terms that are relevant to a target abroad. Your reaction to the president's statement?
The personal and try to deal with the issues, but that comes awfully close to lying, And the other thing that they often say was, we do everything that's permitted by the law. And there's some truth to that. It's just that there's too many laws. For instance, I always oppose this Patriot Act, and according to the law, they can do that. But according to the Fourth Amendment, they're not allowed to do this. So for him to try to confuse things and say they're not spying on us, they've been caught in so many lies, but they keep doing it. But I think what's happening now, and I find it very encouraging, a lot of people are catching on, and I think this NSA and this spying on American people is a great issue for us because it's just not the libertarians and the constitutional conservatives, but there's a lot of progressives now.
Liberals.
There's a conservative and liberal coalition because on some of these important issues, and I'm always encouraged when I see that.
Well, yesterday in the White House briefing room, and I know, Dr. Paul, you spend your time watching Jay Carney. I mean, you sit there with some old popcorn. You're like, oh, Carney's on. Let's watch. This is what Carney said yesterday. I felt like I was at a Carney. Let's listen.
NSA collects only what it is explicitly authorized to collect. And while NSA analysts examine only a very small percentage of the world's traffic, if communications of U.S. persons are incidentally collected, the agency must follow minimization procedures that are approved by the U.S. Attorney General and designed to protect the privacy of U.S. persons.
Well, your take.
Yeah, only what they're authorized to. But the thing that they are authorized to do is only with a legitimate search warrant. A FISA court search warrant isn't a search warrant. The FISA courts, I believe, are unconstitutional.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
If they had a legitimate search warrant, they could go after it, but that would be very, very limited, and they'd have to have probable cause. There wouldn't be this blanket spying on everything that we do. I certainly am hopeful that the American people wake up and to say enough is enough. We want our liberties back.
Your old friend Joe Scarborough the other day on Morning Joe, the other show I know you're glued to in the AM. He said this about the 2016 presidential field, referencing your son.
There's no doubt that Rand Paul is going. I think in most polls you see in the early states, Rand Paul's going to have a big chunk of support, but he's not going to win.
He went on. We cut that short, but he went on to say, the kind of Paul approach where you take this aggressive, stance on all these issues, you get a lot of publicity initially that ultimately, cooler heads and more moderate heads prevail, or still conservative, but more moderate perhaps an approach.
Yeah, Joe's been a good friend and actually has stuck up for me quite frequently, but he's sort of falling into the establishment viewpoint, on this. And, of course, that was said about me. But I think times are changing even in a short period of time compared to when I ran in 07 and 08, and now, the whole country has changed. I mean, we've had a major economic crisis, and people have turned against the wars. And actually, Rand does, I think, a little bit better job in presenting these. I want to say this is it, and this is what we have to do, and make it very, very clear. He probably, approaches a little bit, softer and a little more, able to convince people. So I think he's going to have a lot of influence. So Joe doesn't know, and I don't know, and you don't know who's going to be the candidate. I actually get a little tired of running the next election about a week after the last election. That I guess we're starved for discussing what's really going on. I'd much rather be talking about whether or not we need even need a Federal Reserve Board chairman instead of some of this other political stuff that goes on.
Yeah, well, I knew you were going to get to Larry Summers. We'll get to that in just a moment. But is Rand, do you think, more conservative than you or less conservative? People are always comparing the two of you, and it's obviously that's kind of fun to do, father-son. I mean, we do that with our kids all the time.
Yeah,
how do you describe him versus you? I mean, where are the differences?
I sort of get tired of that type of
discussion too. Sorry.
But I don't know whether...
My listeners are interested, so I ask.
I think we have to be awfully close. But a lot of people think that, that we are so close that we talk about this all the time. And the truth is he is so busy and he's doing things that I rarely talk to. When we talk on the telephone, it's usually about family matters and how his kids are doing. So... But when other people talk about it, they're wanting to look and find, to find disagreements. And there are probably some, but I really couldn't sit here and list them for you. I think it's more the approach that is somewhat different and the emphasis. I probably came down much harder, say on the Fed, but he supports auditing the Fed. Most Americans do believe that we ought to know what the Fed is doing. So I think it's approach that there's a slight difference, but I don't think basically there's a whole lot of difference on any of the issues.
Do you compost, though? He composts.
Which is?
Compost. You take your garbage and you put it in a big pile with a fence around it and put some like fertilizer and some stuff on. You don't do that? You don't ride your bike like he does?
No, I don't do that.
He just bragged to me that he composts, and I've been teasing him about it ever since. So he's with the kids on that.
I'll have to say he's much more into composting than I am, so that's our difference.
Okay, excellent, perfect. And Dr. Paul, on the Federal Reserve question, the question is when the president will pick a new chief, and I bet it's going to be Larry Summers. Others think differently. But do you think it matters really in the end who's picked?
I think your last comment is where I am. Somebody called the other day for a comment, and I said it doesn't matter, even though there are technical difference between Yellen and Summers, where Summers is much more into fiscal spending than Yellen. So no, overall there's no difference because both of them endorse the idea that it's the job of one individual who's in charge of the Fed to decide what interest rates should be and how quickly the money supply should grow. And that is impossible to know. It's strictly pure Keynesianism. They vary their approach, on how to plan the economy through monetary policy. But that is the problem, and that is the reason I push this, because the Fed is responsible for the booms and the busts and all the problems that we have, and they're going to be totally responsible for things coming, which will arrive here in not the too distant future, because you can't print $85 billion a month and not expect some very, very serious consequences. I think they've already started. I don't believe this economy is going to all of a sudden grow its way out of it just by printing money and spending money. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Doesn't work. Are you big into the stock market, or do you own gold? What do you do for investment?
I'm usually stuck with hard assets that I've been leery about.
Property?
The stock market, because I'm not an insider. I don't have the information. I mean, some of these guys can make money on the way down, the way up, and they can anticipate what's happening. And right now, the stock market, the theory was, as long as stocks went up, you and I and the middle class would start spending money and the economy would be revived. But they found out that there's about only 20% of the people who really own stocks. And guess what? They get richer, and the people in the middle class who have to use the money and suffer from price inflation and wages that aren't going up, they suffer the consequences. And there's a rule in Austrian economics: if you destroy a currency, you destroy the middle class, and the wealthy get wealthier. And that is what we're doing.
Dr. Paul, I look forward to August 12th when Ron Paul TV begins, and I hope I get to join you on Ron Paul TV. And
well, that'd be great, and thank you, Laura.
All right, you take care. Dr. Ron Paul on The Laura Ingraham Show.
The Laura Ingraham Show.